All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. To be doing my preview and prediction for Texas versus TCU. This one will be in Austin. Game day will be in town. Big-time ranked matchup between these two opponents. TCU, they're still fighting for a playoff opportunity, while Texas, they're looking to play spoiler. And they're also looking to punch their ticket to the Big 12 championship game. Texas, 7-point favorites in this one. ABC primetime, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then DK Memorial Stadium, of course, will be the location of this one. Texas has dominated the all-time series, 64-27-1. Look at the Texas offense, averaging over 36 points per game, 447 yards per contest. Last 2 weeks they had 2 road games in Stillwater and then on the road in Manhattan against Kansas State. It's been the Bijan Robinson show. He's had 100-plus yards and, 7 straight games here. The first 2 weeks he was unable to hit that mark, but since September 10th, he's been on a roll here, running the football, 1,129 yards, 12 touchdowns, 209. This was a season high last week against Kansas State. Then you had 140 on only 24 touches against the Pokes. They've had no problem running the ball. Bijan, of course, very skilled. This is a guy who can really get things going with his feet in a short area. He can fit through these tiny creases despite being 6 foot 222. He does a lot of good things for them. He's also really improved this year as a route runner, 314 yards and 2 touchdowns as a receiver. He's really taken his game to another level this year, it seems. I do like this running game because of the number 2 back they have in Roschon Johnson as well. He's got 429 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging over 6.3 yards per carry for him. He's always been a very reliable number 2. This has been a great backfield for years now here at Texas. Biggest concern, though, coming back home, Quinn Ewers, it's good for him. He hasn't fared well on the road these past 2 weeks. Against Oklahoma State, completed only 38% of his passes, 19 for 49 on that one. He had 300-plus yards. So he was, effective when he was completing the football. 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 picks in that one. He was a big reason for their collapse in Stillwater. He did not play very well at all. And then this past week against Kansas State, completed only 58%, a little under 200 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns. Didn't have any picks, but, coming back home is going to do wonders for him. Obviously, all the way back in week 2 against Bama, he was lighting him up before he got hurt. Comes back from injury. Shines against Oklahoma, showcases that arm talent, had almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in that one. He was pretty good against Iowa State as well the next week, but, it's been just not great for Ewers the last 2 weeks going on the road. Those are his first 2 career road starts as well, so, it's a little bit excusable. He's still a very young quarterback. He's only played in 6 games this year because, he missed, 4 games for that injury. He suffered against the Tide, 3 games rather, but Quinn Ewers, very talented quarterback. He's also got a nice group of pass catchers to work with. You got Xavier Worthy, 40 grabs, 552 yards, 9 touchdowns. He's very undersized, but he is a heck of a route runner, 6'1", 164. He's a burner as well. This is a guy they're going to want to get the football to, especially against the secondary this year. It's really struggled. This is just a perfect matchup, it seems, for Xavier Worthy. I do like Jatavian Sanders as well. His ability to step up and deliver, from his tight end spot this year. 39 grabs, 450 yards. He's got 5 touchdowns. And then Jordan Whittington, he's got 31 grabs for 426 yards. And then after that, it's Bijan Robinson. So for the most part, that's it in this receiving core. They do not have a lot of depth one bit. They have 3 impressive producers there. Then you turn to the running backs after that. The next 3 guys in receptions and yards are running backs. So they don't really have many guys they like to dish it out to. Tariq Milton, he's still there, though, coming in as a transfer if they need some depth. He only has 2 catches on the year. Of course, the Isaiah Neyor injury really hurt them. But they've had no problems producing through the air. This is a very good offense. They have tremendous balance. Steve Sarkisian did a great job with this group, especially with this offensive line. They, it's a mixed bag, really young. You got 1 senior up front, and that's it. Jake Majors, a redshirt sophomore, is the next most experienced guy there at center. 2 freshmen, though, Cole Hudson, Kelvin Banks Jr. This offensive line, I think, has been much better than people anticipated, considering how much youth there was. All around, this offense is loaded with, a lot of young talent. So I think in the long term, they're going to be great. But, when you're looking forward to this game here, hosting TCU, this is the ideal attack you want to balance things out and beat TCU. They've had that balance the last 2 weeks, obviously. Ewers, he struggled a good bit in terms of, efficiency, but 466 yards against Kansas State, 523 against the Pokes, 6.4 and 6.5 yards respectively in those 2 games. So they've had great offense. The fourth quarter, mainly in the second half, it's really been the same old story where they've not been as consistent in the back half of these games. But, coming back home, that might be something they can establish here. Overall, though, top to bottom, good offense for Texas, and that all-young offensive line has really helped lead the way for them. Looking at the TCU offense, it's a big reason why they are 9-0, over 43 points per game. Max Duggan, he wasn't the starter in week 1 against Colorado. That was Chandler Morris for whatever reason, but he has completed 66% of his passes this season, 2,400-plus yards, phenomenal ratio of 24 touchdowns, 2 picks, just shy of 10 yards per attempt for him. He's done wonders. He's a fourth-year starter at this point. Sonny Dykes coming over, putting him into the system. He does a great job running it. 282 on the ground, 4 touchdowns for him. Duggan's been a heck of a producer for them. They don't give the ball enough to Keandre Miller, a running back loaded with speed. Only 153 attempts on the year. It's about 17 a game, a little north of 1,000 yards, 12 touchdowns. He picks up yards in bunches. That's a big reason why he's averaging 112 a game despite the limited touches. He's got 100-plus in 6 different games this season. This is a guy they need to continue to feed. This Texas run defense is pretty sound and solid, though, but I think they like what they have on the interior offensive line in terms of size. These are some massive players they have. Allen Ali, Steve Avili, Brandon Coleman. Not Brandon Coleman, but John Lands, rather, at right guard. Those guys are all seniors, and they're all 320-plus pounds, 6'5", 6'6". They got some great size on the interior. That's going to be a heck of a matchup, and that's why they're able to run the ball so well through the interior, because Keandre Miller, he's a bigger back himself. He's 6 foot 220, just like Bijan Robinson, but he's full of speed. You wouldn't think he's that big with how fast he runs. Imari DeMarcado, he's a very good number 2 also, 342 and 4 touchdowns on the year. And then Imani Bailey, I think he's pretty solid as well if they need to get him involved. They just don't give the rock to these guys enough. The team averages about 39 attempts per game. Duggan accounts for about 9 of those, but they just don't run the ball enough, and I think that's something they need to look to do. Right now it's not broke, so don't fix it. They've played a lot of close games this year, and I feel like they could really grind down opponents a little more. But, they love to air it out. Quentin Johnston, high riser on the draft boards. You know how talented this guy was coming into the year. And then early on, they really didn't get him involved that much. And then Kansas and Oklahoma State happened, where he had 180-plus yards in both of those games. He's been pretty hot ever since. Did not play against Texas Tech. Injured his ankle early on in that one. Ended up with no grabs on the game. 6'4", 215. This guy has great abilities for his size. He can win downfield with his speed, can win jump balls with his hands and his leaping ability, and after the catch, he's pretty impressive as well. This is just a guy you got to get the ball to. Passing attack was kind of out of sorts when he was off the field. Eventually figure things out. Tay Barber, Darius Davis, those guys are both seniors as well. They have a lot of experience in this receiving core. Gunnar Henderson's another one of them. Savion Williams, 18 grabs, 279, and 3 touchdowns on the year. He's going to be that guy that fills in for Johnston if he can't get the go. 6'5", 215. Williams, he's also a heck of a guy when it comes to catching the football downfield. He had an impressive grab against Tech where he was, fading way out of bounds, and he was able to put his hands up and snag that catch. So TCU, this is a really good, balanced offense. They have not been slowed down really much this year. I do want to see them continue to try to run the ball a little bit more, though, but, I think they're 4th nationally in total offense, 400-plus yards in every single game this season, 7.3 yards per play. They're the ideal picture of balance, though, despite not running it that much. Sonny Dykes, he's got a great repertoire of what's going on with this offense. That's just something I'd like to see a little bit more, kind of help out this ailing defense. But overall, TCU, phenomenal offense. That's a big reason why they are 9-0. Looking at the Texas defense, I think they've made some big strides this year. They're giving up a little under 22 points per contest. The run defense, I think, has been a great growth area for them. They've not been bad one bit this year. They gave up only 161 against Bama, and about 70 of that came on one play. Other than that, they've only allowed 150-plus yards only one more time. That was the Oklahoma. It's been a few other times. Oklahoma State had 142, 139 last week against K-State. Texas Tech had 148. So they've been close, but for the most part, this has been a very sound run defense. They're not getting grinded down. Last year, of course, it was a big year for that defense. They weren't great. Only 3.3 yards per play. Held Iowa State in check with only 74, 61 for WVU. And I thought that'd be a big, opportunity for West Virginia to kind of run the ball. They have a great group of backs, and they just were not able to get things going on the ground in that one. They've allowed 12 touchdowns on the ground, but from a yard standpoint, I think they're doing a very good job, especially with this defensive line that needed to play better. Guys like Keandre Coburn, Moro Ojomo, these guys, they've been quite productive. 9 tackles for loss between the two of them, a total of 5 sacks. This interior D-line, they've really stepped up this year, which is good, especially with a pass rush that coming into the year did not have a lot of depth. And Devondre Sweat, he's another senior there. They got size, they got leadership on the interior. It's really helped out this defensive line. Baron Sorrell has stepped up a good bit here off the edge for them. He's got 4 sacks. Jalen Ford, though, has been the biggest emergence. Last year, he was really good at getting into the backfield, but more so this year. He's the team leader right now in tackle for loss. He's up there in tackles as well. He actually leads the team in tackles with 82. Demarion Overshone, he's got 67 right behind him. Very sound duo of linebacking core guys here for Texas. Overall, top to bottom, this defense has taken some big strides. The secondary, Ryan Watts coming over has helped. Deshaun Jameson, the safeties have been getting downhill a lot better, and that's really helped them stop the run this year. Jaron Thompson, I think he stepped up for them. Anthony Cook, for the most part, this is a veteran-led secondary that was not great last season. Deshaun Jameson is now up to 7 pass breakups on the year. A lot more playmaking's been evident from these guys. They've given up 300-plus yards in each of the last 3 games, so they've certainly been struggling from a yardage standpoint. Still allowing 65% completion rate. Last year they were among the bottom in college football in that number. They've given up 300-plus yards and 2 touchdowns in each of the last 3 games. I should go ahead and add that as well. So they've definitely not been playing their best ball as of late, which is not great with this nice high-flying passing attack coming to town. So that's certainly an area that I think they might struggle. Going to look to get Jalen Ford more involved, though, rushing the passer, because that's still, kind of a weak spot of this Texas defense. They do have 19 sacks on the year. This is not exactly a consistent unit for the most part. They do have 5 sacks over the last 3 games. It's a pretty, it's a respectable number, but for the most part, generating pressure has definitely been an issue for them. So that's something you're going to have to watch in this game. But I do think they match up pretty well in terms of size on the interior D-line. I don't think they're going to be overwhelmed by any means. I think they could certainly stuff Keandre Miller more often than not, but his speed, especially if they can get him on the edge, is going to be a problem. So it's going to be a fun matchup here for this front 6 of Texas. Can't wait to see how that matchup plays out. The secondary, though, they do seem like they're going to be more battle-tested than not because, again, over the last 3 weeks, they've just been pretty poor against the pass. Again, the TCU defense, this has not been a unit that's really great. They weren't good a season ago. They gave up almost 35 points per game. That's all the way down to 27, so they certainly have improved a good bit, especially with the linebacking core they have of D. Winters, Jamoy Hoge, and Johnny Hodges. Winters, he's expected to miss the first half of this game. He was ejected for targeting. I don't believe the rule's been fixed yet. I'm pretty sure you still have to miss the first half of the next game when you're ejected in the third or fourth quarter. That's a big loss for them. D. Winters, he's their top player for sure. 9.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 43 tackles. Those are all team highs right there. They're losing. Other than tackles, he's 4th on the team in that mark. Hodges and Hoge, 55 and 53. Jamoy, he has some great closing ability at linebacker. It's something you really need to see here against these athletes at Texas. They can really win in space. Be interested to see what they do with him and how they match him up. Mark Perry, one of those transfers, along with Hodges. These guys have been pretty impactful for them. From his safety spot, he's got 52 tackles. Trevius Hodges-Tomlinson at corner. Josh Foster, Josh Newton. This is a very talented secondary, but they've also really struggled in their own right. This has just not been very good. They allow a lot of big plays. They're in the bottom of college football in multiple statistics when it comes to this secondary. One of them that they are not in the bottom of would be, opponent completion percentage. This is a pass defense that's not given up a lot of efficiency. Only 53.8%. Gave up only 50% to Tech this past weekend. Of course, they're, down to the third-string quarterback at one point. But you look at the Oklahoma State game, only 44% allowed, 44 to Oklahoma. The first half of the back half of that game, they didn't have their quarterback either. But, the secondary has not been too bad in terms of efficiency. But against Kansas, they're giving up plenty of big plays to the backup there. Kansas State was averaging over 10 yards per attempt before their QB got hurt. So the numbers are certainly kind of telling here. They do have 10 picks on the year. It's great to see that playmaking. But, in a lot of these games, the Tech, the Kansas State, and the Oklahoma game that I can think of, and Kansas, that's 4 games right there. They were playing a backup quarterback in that one. Colorado, they don't have a very good passing attack, so the numbers are kind of skewed maybe a little bit, I think. They did look very good in that second half against West Virginia, and the same thing against Oklahoma State. They didn't have any injuries in that. Spencer Sanders, he was played the entire game. They took over in that second, I think it was that fourth quarter. They played very well, so they seem to be playing very good in the back half of these games. So that is something that's certainly encouraging for a defense that is not great one bit. You look at their box score in terms of statistics allowed. It's kind of the same stuff each and every week when you look at the rush yards and the pass yards. This is a defense that's certainly, less than stellar. Gave up about 200 rushing to Texas Tech there. After Martinez went down against Kansas State, they weren't able to really run the ball as efficiently as they wanted to. They've yet to allow 200 yards rushing this game, so the run defense maybe is not as poor as advertised, but it's certainly, something I think Texas will expose. Bijan Robinson, talented running back. I think, when you look at speedy slashing runners, that's kind of more of their weakness here. But, Robinson, despite maybe not having the speed like a Deuce Vaughn, he's certainly capable of showcasing his elusiveness, and that might be a problem here for him. this defensive line. A lot of young players coming into the year. They've not been that productive. It's really been the linebackers that have led to 19 sacks this year for the Frogs. Dylan Horton, he's their best defensive end. Demonic Williams, he's been good for them as a true freshman. With his size, 320 pounds, about 6'3" there. So this has been an interesting defensive line for them. I do like what they've been able to get out of some of these guys like Terrell Cooper, Tamon Mitchell. It's kind of been a rotational unit for them, but they've not really been productive, and that's something I think they might lose in the trenches here on this side of the ball. Top to bottom, it's not a great defense. They definitely have good playmakers, though. You like guys like Perry, Hodges Tomlinson, D. Winters. I like Hoge as well. So they have those guys that are stars. But top to bottom, this is not a great defense by any means. Secondary, I think they're going to have some big-time struggles in this one. But, they might have to load up a good bit, slow down the run. Even sent against Texas Tech, though, there was a guy running free wide open for a 50-yard touchdown. So this is a unit that's still struggling, and I think that Texas, going on the road, it's not going to be any easier here. So their offense is definitely going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Look at the team comparisons. Quarterback, I think Max Duggan has a clear edge over Quinn Ewers, a 4-year starter, versus a guy who's coming off his first career road starts and was not great in those. He is back at home, so it definitely helps him out. Duggan, though, the better quarterback. I like the Texas backfield more than the TCU one. Two very good backfields. Bijan Robinson, though, he's one of the best backs in college football. Wide receiver, much deeper group for the Horned Frogs, I would say. The offensive line, I think, is a little bit better as well, despite Texas having some impressive success. From a defensive line standpoint, I love the interior D-line of Texas. They're pretty deep with leadership and, size. Ojomo, Tavondre Sweat, Kendra Coburn, very good defensive front for Texas. They still lack a bit of pass rush, but linebacking, I think these are kind of even, I would say, linebacker and secondary play. Texas, though, I like Ford, Overshone as well. TCU not far behind either. You could definitely make a case for that. And same with the secondary. Neither secondary's been great this year. I think they're both going to have their issues in this one, but TCU just a little bit more playmaking for my liking from their group of guys. Only 7 picks on the year for Texas as a team. 5 of those coming from defensive backs. And TCU, they've been making some good plays in the back end, but neither one I'm really going to bang the hammer on the table about, because both of them, I think, have struggled a good bit this year. Looking at the final thoughts and the prediction on this one, I think keys to the game, Texas, get some inside penetration. I keep raving about that D-line. Good way to knock Duggan off his platform. And Keandre Miller, a very speedy runner who loves to rip it up between the tackles. Don't collapse in the second half. That's a big key. That's really been a big theme of Texas over the years, especially this year. Have not been any better in the second half of games. And then TCU, get ahead and stay ahead. Going on the road here to Austin, it's going to be a tough environment. If you can get ahead, I like TCU's an example of a team that's really, especially on defense, come alive here in these second halves of games, mainly in that fourth quarter. So if they can get ahead and stay ahead, they're going to have a great job of winning this one and contain the Bijan Robinson show, of course. Texas, 42-34 for me. I think this will knock TCU out of the playoff race. Coming on the road here, the defense, I think it's just going to be too much balance for Texas, especially with that home crowd in their favor. TCU, I think they're definitely going to score some points and stay in this one, but I think going on the road, they're going to make a handful of mistakes you typically don't see them make this year. I think that'll be the downfall for the Horned Frogs. This is going to be a great game, though. Game day's in town. Primetime atmosphere, playoff spot on the line for the Frogs. In Texas, they're playing for a lot here also. So I believe if they win this game, we'll probably see a rematch in Arlington in a couple of weeks, about a month here. So it's going to be a great game, though, guys. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.